In this video, I will show you how to search for, find and analyze proper Formula One data. We will be breaking down three levels of data from casual everyday statistics to complex graphs and scatter plots. Don't worry, I will explain everything in detail. We will keep it simple and easy to follow. Hello everyone, Anderson here. Welcome to the channel. If you're new here, please do subscribe. Let's get started. Data is everything in Formula One. I'd even argue that data is as important as the fuel in a Formula One car. In every team, every driver, every session, data is collected all the time, and this data, when it is presented to us audience, it is enjoyable to analyze and dissect. This data also helps us make sense of what's happening on the track, and it also helps us make sense of what the experts, panelists and commentators are talking about. It helps us understand our favorite team's pit stop strategies and tire strategies during races, and it also helps us figure out minute details about which driver is faster around which corner and how some drivers are managing to extract the most out of their car. Now, the word data can make things sound very geeky, but aren't we all geeky about the things that we love? Don't worry, not all data is math, and in fact most data in Formula One is visual and it can be easily interpreted. We are starting off with data level 1. This is your casual Formula One stats. This is more about the sport than what happens on the track. There are plenty of pages online that store and share information in different formats, but here are a few sites that I really like. First up, we have statsf1.com. Now, this is my go-to site for anything Formula One from the past. This site is independently run and it has no spammy ads, and let me walk you through what is there in this site. First up, we have the home page, and you get to see a little bit of history about Formula One and latest news updates. Today is August 3rd and it is Jules Bianchi's birthday. 74 years ago today, Alberto Ascari became a world champion. I know these are all in the home page. We also have some news updates and stuff, but the best part is when you go to this tab called statistics. Now you have 6 or 7 major stats, and under these stats, all of them are arranged in every measurable way possible. For example, let's look at world champion titles, and if you want to go by number, and you get to see who are the drivers who have the most number of world championships, and you can see Schumacher and Lewis Hamilton are at the top, and then you have Fangio, and then Prost and Vettel and Verstappen. But if you want to know how many world titles were won consecutively, you get to see that as well. Michael Schumacher won it from 2000 to 2004, so 5 in a row. And then you have Sebastian Vettel, who's 4 in a row, Lewis Hamilton, who's 4 in a row, Max Verstappen 4 in a row. Let's say you want to check out total number of wins. Yes, if you go through that, you obviously know Lewis Hamilton has 106 victories, and you can even select from which year to which year and then filter it out. But if you want to know who has the most number of wins per Grand Prix, then you get to see this as well. Lewis Hamilton, who's 9 wins in Britain, Michael Schumacher has 8 in the French GP, and then Lewis Hamilton also has 8 in Hungary. Alain Prost has 6 in Brazil, Ayrton Senna has 6 in Monaco. These are really good stats you can basically explore from this website. They also have the number of wins by grid position. So basically from grid place number 22, one person has won. This was John Watson in McLaren in 1983. And then you have 1 win from P19, 1 from P18, P17. I know there is Max Verstappen who won. Kimi Raikkonen also, I remember, from 2005. This is one of those iconic races. Obviously 505 races have been won by the person who started from pole position, right? So these are some interesting ways to explore stats. But wait, this is just the first tab of the website, right? Now if you go to seasons and you go to, let us say, 2026 season, you get to see the points and the order in which people are winning. You get to see who's won each of the Grand Prix, and if you go to maybe Hungary, you also get to see qualifications, who qualified, who had the fastest lap, who came second, and you also get to see the starting grid as well. Now this is after all the penalties have been applied. So yes, Leclerc was P2, Hamilton had a 3-place grid penalty, and the reason for penalties are also mentioned here. We get to see the results here as well. We get to see the distance or time differences between first place and whoever is finishing later. We also get to see who led what laps. But the best part of this is the lap by lap visuals. You get to see, yes, Norris started first, but by end of lap 1, it was Piastri. Piastri was leading. Piastri had his first pit stop here, and then obviously Piastri had his second pit stop around lap 30. And by the time Norris pitted, yes, Piastri was in P2. Why? Because this is where the Sainz and Piastri collision happened. And then there was a safety car 57 and 58. That's because Piastri had a crash out. His gearbox failed and his car had to be moved away, so there was a VSC. Verstappen had taken P2 because Hamilton had pitted and he has gone to P4, and Antonelli didn't pit, so he continued, he climbed all the way up to P3. So this is a very good visual. I know, because I know what happened in the race, it is easy for me to make sense of what happened in the race. This does not give the entire picture, but definitely it gives you a brief overview at the beginning of every lap who was at what position in this race. If you go to the drivers tab, you can pick any driver you want, and then you can go through their own individual stats as well. This is Valtteri Bottas and his rank on the starting grid, which means he had started from pole 20 times, he has started from P3 36 times, he has started from P16 22 times. He also has more P2 finishes than P3. This entire site is a treasure for you to just go and explore on your own. One of my favorites is the diaries tab, where you get to see every day for the week or for the month and see what had happened in the past. Like for example, yes, in the homepage we saw that today was Jules Bianchi's birthday. Also August 4th, which is tomorrow, this is when Fangio became a world champion in 1957. On Tuesday, August 11th, Williams won the constructors in 1996. Yeah, so this is such a nice website, all-in-one website for all statistics related to Formula One. Another similar site that I really like is bigdataf1.com. Very similar to the Stats F1 site, but it has a little more modern presentation. One more recommendation that I have in this data level 1 is f1datastop.com. Now this has a few more features than the above mentioned sites. You can explore it on your own, but one of my favorite sections is the pit wall section. Here it's asking us to select one of the races, and I have selected Budapest. And now let us say if we select Norris and Verstappen, you get to see all of their data. Now, this is telemetry on lap 1. What was the difference between Max Verstappen and Norris? And if you press the play button here, you actually get to see in this tiny little map their track positions, right? And then you also get to see in the telemetry who's overtaken who and who's where, and how big the gap is between these two drivers. You can also speed it up so that you can see it really fast, and you also get to see who's on the throttle, who's on the brakes, and all of that, right? So this is something really cool. So I highly recommend that you go and play around with this site as much as you want, because you will literally lose track of time replaying races from the past. And with that, I want to slowly get into the next bucket of data level 2. Right now at this level, we are going to compare laps and telemetry of drivers. There are plenty of sites that have this information and they present it in unique ways, but my favorite go-to site has always been GP Tempo, just for how simple and elegant it is. So let's see how it is once you click on launch. First you get to pick a race, and in this case I'm going with the Hungarian GP, and I'm going to choose qualifying. And I know in qualifying Norris came first and Hamilton came second. So if I select these two drivers, you get to see across qualifying how their lap times were. So if I were to compare the two fastest laps of their sessions, I just hit compare fastest laps and go to their telemetry, and here we get to see the difference between both of these drivers, specifically through delta. In the beginning of their laps, they seem to be neck and neck till here, but something happens and Lewis actually seems to be much ahead, and he loses a bit of time by turn 4, but then he gains back a bit of time in sector 1. So this entire sector 1 seems to be in Lewis's favor. So let's see what happened. Why is Lewis so good in sector 1? If you zoom in on sector 1, you get to see what the big deal is. In this case, you get to see that Norris has taken his foot off the throttle much earlier and he got onto the brakes much earlier. Lewis braked slightly late, and that actually gave gave a little bit of a push, and in the exit of the corner when he has put his foot down, Lewis seems to have had a little more boost in terms of lap time. So one assumption here could be Lewis had a better exit and Lando probably had a bit of wheel spin, which means he did not have enough grip, and that showed up in this lap time. So what about this section here? Lewis seems to be on the throttle much earlier, but that cost him a little more lap time. What that means is Lewis took a wider line compared to Lando. So Lando had a tighter line, so he was slightly little late on the throttle, but Lewis, because he was taking a wider line, he got on the throttle milliseconds early, right? So this is how you look at a graph like this and then analyze. Let's reset this. In such a godly sector 1, something happens to Lewis, and in sector 2 he loses so much of pace. So let's analyze what happened. So to be honest, till turn 8 they are neck and neck. If you see at this specific point, Lewis seems to have a higher throttle, but his RPM isn't necessarily too far off. What that means is Lewis was on the wrong gear. Lewis was in the second gear, whereas Lando was in the third gear. And because of that one mistake, I don't want to call it a mistake because we don't know for sure what kind of engine mapping and engine setting Lewis went out with, but clearly there was a difference in gear, and because of that there was a loss of time, and suddenly now Lewis is behind. There is one extra braking section where Lewis was on the brakes but Lando never touched the brakes. Yep, and that adds a little more time, and basically the time difference now compounds, and as they go through the sector 2 and eventually to sector 3, the time delta just keeps increasing. But if you remember correctly, Lewis was 0.01 seconds away from Norris at the end. So definitely Lewis gained a lot of time back in sector 3. So what happened in sector 3? Lewis braked late and then he got on the throttle early. He managed to make sure that he got good exits, but all the good work Lewis had done in the last sector gets spoiled because McLaren does the trick where they are copying Mercedes, and Lando seems to have gotten off the throttle just before reaching the end. If you see the overall picture and if you see the overall top speed, you also get to see where there is an engine deficit. Mercedes versus Ferrari, there is definitely an engine deficit happening here. Norris and McLaren seem to be going well, whereas Ferrari and Hamilton, there seems to be a lot more super clipping over there. So yes, these are minute details that you get to see just by looking at the graphs. But if we looked at the graphs of all the lap times in this session, we also got to see that Lewis's last lap was horrible. So let's now compare the two final laps, lap 11 and lap 14 in this case, from Q3 of Hamilton. You see that the speed dropped off at the end. What happened? Lewis lost a lot of time in the first corner, and then he never managed to get the best out of the car till sector 3. So at the end, if you see the throttle data, he's just let go, right? Basically, he realized by sector 3 he's not going to improve on his previous lap, so he just let go. So yeah, this site is called gp-tempo.com, gp-tempo.com. You will have tons of fun analyzing data, but you also can analyze data from 2 different years as well. So if you want to compare this year's lap to previous year's lap as well, you can do that. So this is data level 2. If you found this interesting and you want to go all in with all the graphs and numbers and data, we have data level 3, and this is where a lot of experimental projects are built by so many amazing talented people around the world. One of my favorite apps or sites is called tracinginsights.com. Now this site has everything and it could be overwhelming, so this is how I usually approach this app. Let's start with a race and a session. So today we are looking at Hungarian GP and I want to pick the race, and it's asking for me to select some drivers. So I'm going to select Hamilton, Leclerc, Verstappen, Norris and Piastri. Let's start with the first graph that you see. I have hidden some outliers, which means you don't get to see all the pit stops. Yes, pit stops are obviously slower laps, right? So if I hide all the outliers, this is how the whole lap time looks. So we obviously started really slow, and then as the race progressed, you got better lap times, right? Slower, better lap times. And you also get to see this is green, which means it was green flag. There was a bit of yellow flag here and there, and then this is the purple is VSC, and then towards the end it's green. Like that's the status of the track. Now we also get to see the weather updates. You get to see track temperature, how it was. It was getting colder and colder as we went through the race. Here we have rainfall data. We did not have any rains in the Hungarian GP, so this has nothing. We also have some lap time heat maps. What that means is the brighter red color, it is the slower the lap time is, and the bluer it is, the faster the lap time is. Now, because we have selected 5 drivers, this is a comparison between all 5 drivers, and the darkest blue seems to be Leclerc in lap 58, which means he had the fastest lap. If you thought till here it is colorful and complicated, let me just show you the stint analysis, right? Now, this graph looks super overwhelming. That's because everything is selected. Now let's hide everything and let's start from one at a time, which means let us say Hamilton. Hamilton started the race in softs, which means this is Hamilton's stint. He had a lap time which is around 86 seconds, right? And then slowly he started losing lap time, and this is again corrected for fuel. In comparison, let us select Leclerc's stint, right? Now Leclerc went a little longer on the soft tire and then he pitted. Now, if I were to compare that stint with Max Verstappen's stint, Max here is in yellow color. Max seems to have had the same or similar pace as the Ferraris in softs. Why is that? If you remember in the race, Lewis made that statement, Max is slow, right? He could not pass Max Verstappen in the soft tire. That's why their lap times are so similar. So Lewis pits first, followed by Max Verstappen. Now, how did they do in their second stint? Now let's take the second stint. This is Max Verstappen's hard tire in the second stint. This is Leclerc's hard tire. Leclerc also had a shorter stint. Why? Because Leclerc was on a 3-stop strategy and Max was on a 2-stop strategy. Other than Piastri, because of his DNF, literally all 4 of the other drivers finished the race in soft tires. So let's see how their stints went in their soft tires. And if you remember, they all put up their soft tire during the VSC, which means all of them had the same length in terms of a stint. Bit of a mixed bag, the lap times were all over the place. But if you look at Verstappen's stint, Verstappen has done close to 28 laps, 29 laps in the soft tire. Yes, we knew that Verstappen did not pit for the VSC, so he gained the second position and he managed to keep the second position. How cool is that? You get to pick up whatever session you want, whatever stint you want, and you get to see how each tire performed in a particular race, in a particular track for a particular driver. Now, this picture explains your tire strategy. Hamilton was on 13 laps in soft, and then he went on to hards. He pitted 26 laps in another hards, and then during the VSC they all pit, so they all have 14 laps in the soft tire, whereas Max Verstappen had medium, started in the mediums. He had a really long hard tire stint but an even longer soft tire stint. This graph also gives us position changes. Piastri was P1, he pitted, he got back again after his pit stop. Again he got back, but this is where his incident with Sainz happened, so he was P2, and once the virtual safety car was there, yes, Verstappen climbed to P2 and he finished P2. Now if you see, there is a gap in P3. Why? Antonelli finished P3 and we never selected Antonelli as a driver that we wanted to analyze in the beginning, right? So that place is empty. 4th is Hamilton and 5th is Leclerc. Now if you thought this was really cool, let me tell you, this is just one of the many dashboards that is available, right? You get to see downforce configuration ratings, you get to do race pace, you get to see throttles, you get to see overtake data. One of my personal favorites is the pit stop dashboard, and here we have the pit stops for the Hungarian GP, and you know that Racing Bulls set the record for the fastest pit stop this season with 1.99, and this is their entire fastest and the slowest pit stops, right? And you also see Aston Martin had one of the fastest pit stops. They also had one of the slower pit stops as well. We see Williams have one of the slowest pit stops as well. You can also check out the lap times delta dashboard where you can select 2 drivers and see how they did head to head. During the race, Norris had the better lap time through most of the race, whereas Verstappen seemed to have had 1 or 2 laps where he did much better, and this could be right after pit stops before Norris. Some of these dashboards are visually very creative. For example, the championship standings, it is I know we are so used to seeing numbers, but look at this concentric circle kind of a data. There are plenty of really smart people who have created dashboards like this. In fact, if you know any such websites, do leave them in the comment section below. I know there are plenty of GitHub repositories where you can actually download and run dashboards yourself. So yeah, this is data level 3. Formula One data is a minefield. Once you start looking at these kind of dashboards, you will get obsessed. But the fun part is analyzing and over analyzing all of this. I will definitely give a disclaimer. Data is what it is, but sometimes data can be used in silos. People can pick up very specific data just to prove a point, and sometimes data does not give you the whole picture. But speaking with data and facts is always better than randomly throwing out opinions. Anytime when I do race analysis and I put up graphs, one of the most asked questions is, where do you find these graphs? Hopefully this video was helpful. This is where I do my research. This is where I study what happened during a qualifying session or during race. Hopefully you found this video useful. Hopefully some of these websites help you get better at understanding this tremendous sport. If you found this video useful, if you liked some of it, do like, share with your friends and subscribe. Before and after every race, we definitely talk about a lot of news and updates and race analysis and stuff. So definitely subscribe to see more of the content. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Peace.